Before any of this, it is worth saying plainly what a special examination is at this school, because everything that happens on the island depends on it. The students are divided into 4 classes, A at the top and D at the bottom, and those letters are not fixed. They move according to a number called class points, and class points are what determine everything that matters here, from the money a student receives each month to which class they will graduate from. A special examination is simply an event where a large number of class points are put on the table at once, and the classes compete for them. So this is not a test in the ordinary sense. Nobody is being marked on knowledge. The examinations at this school are contests, frequently between the classes and occasionally within them, and the school designs each one to reward a particular quality and punish its absence. Some reward raw academics, some reward cooperation, and some, like this one, reward the ability to read a situation correctly when nobody will tell you what the situation is. This is the first of those contests that the classes face, and it sets the template for everything that follows, which is why it is worth understanding in full, because the students who grasp what this island was really testing are the ones who will still be standing years later. They are told it is a holiday, and for about a day and a half, it genuinely is. The whole first year is put aboard a cruise liner in the middle of summer, and the ship is very good. There is a pool. There is food that nobody is paying for. There are deck chairs and evening entertainment, and the particular kind of aimlessness that only exists on a boat. Students who have spent months being measured against each other are, for a short stretch, simply teenagers on a trip. The school lets them enjoy it. That is worth noticing, because the school never does anything by accident. It lets them spend a night and most of a day getting comfortable, letting their guard down, forming the impression that this is a reward for having survived the first term. And then it takes them to an island and explains what is actually happening. There is a reason the school runs it in this order, the holiday first and the examination second, and it is the same instinct behind the 100,000 points it handed out on the first day of term. The school likes to give people something pleasant and unexplained, and then watch what they do when the bill arrives. A day and a half of pool and deck chairs is not a kindness. It is the school establishing a baseline of comfort so that everything the island takes away afterward lands as a loss rather than a simple hardship. They will remember the ship all week. That is what the ship is for. The announcement is delivered without any particular drama. They will be spending 7 days on an uninhabited island, from the 1st of August to the 7th. It is a special examination, and the results will move class points, which is the only currency at this school that genuinely matters, because class points are what determine whether you sit in A or in D, and what your monthly income looks like for the rest of your time here. Then they are given the rules, and the rules are where this whole thing becomes beautiful, in a cold sort of way. Each class receives 300 points, not each student, each class, 300 identically for all 4 of them, which means Class A and Class D start this examination on precisely level footing for the first and possibly only time in their school careers. These points are called S points and they can be spent. There is a manual listing what is available, and it is not a survival kit. It is a catalog, tents, food, clean water, tools, comforts of various kinds, anything a group of 16-year-olds might want in order to make a week on an island feel less like a week on an island. You simply choose what you would like, and the cost comes out of your 300. And at the end of the 7 days, whatever you have not spent is converted directly into class points. Sit with that for a moment, because it is the entire examination compressed into a single design decision. The 300 points are simultaneously your budget and your score. They are the money you live on and the marks you're graded with, and they are the same pile. Every tent is subtracted from your result. Every hot meal is subtracted from your result. Every small mercy you extend to yourself over 7 days in August is taken directly out of what your class walks away with. Nobody is stopping you from being comfortable. The school will sell you comfort cheerfully, at a fair price, and it will never once suggest that you should not buy it. It simply arranges matters so that comfort has a number attached, and then it watches which classes can bear to be uncomfortable. And there is a wrinkle underneath that which makes it harder still. Any bonus points a class earns during the week cannot be spent while the examination is running. They are added only at the end, so there is no earning your way out of a bad decision on day 2. Whatever you buy out of the 300 you started with, and that is the only pool you will ever have. Think about what a week actually asks of 40 teenagers in August with no adults. Somebody has to find drinkable water, and then everybody has to trust that they found it. Somebody has to build a fire without matches or spend points on matches. There is no shelter unless a class buys one or makes one. There is nothing to eat unless it is purchased or foraged. It rains. people get bitten by things nobody has washed. And every single one of those problems has a price tag hanging next to it, and the price is your grade. The school has essentially constructed a machine that converts teenage discomfort into data. A class that buys a tent on the first night is not being weak, it is making a defensible trade. A class that refuses is not being strong, it is making a different trade. The examination is completely neutral about which is correct, and it will happily let a class ruin itself in either direction by being so frugal that people collapse or so comfortable that they finish with nothing. Nobody is told where the line is. Working out where the line is, with no information and no adults and 6 other days to go, is the actual test. There is a second layer on top of that, and this is where the examination stops being about endurance and starts being about people. Each class must secretly choose one student to be its leader. Exactly one, the class picks whoever it likes, and the identity of that person is not disclosed to anybody outside the class, and concealing it is not a side detail of the examination. It is the examination. Because on the final day, each class is permitted to name who it believes the leaders of the other classes are, and the scoring on that has 3 separate effects, which get flattened together in almost every retelling, and which are genuinely different from one another. If you guess another class's leader correctly, you gain 50 points. If you guess incorrectly, you lose 50 points. And if your own leader is correctly identified by somebody else, you lose 50 points, and you forfeit every bonus point your class earned during the entire examination. That third one is the one that decides everything, and it is the one people understate. Being red does not merely cost you 50, it erases the week. 7 days of careful accumulation gone because one person on a beach somewhere worked out who was holding your card. Which brings us to the bonus points, and to the trap the whole exam is built around. Scattered across the island there are landmarks, caves, river sites, beaches, various distinctive places. These are called spots, and a class can occupy them. Occupying a spot earns your class 1 bonus point. The right expires after 8 hours, and if you go back and redeclare it, you get another bonus point, and so on for as long as you keep renewing. To claim a spot, you need a special key card, and only one person in the class is permitted to use that card. The leader. Look at what that does. If you want the bonus points, and they are real points, freely available, sitting on the island waiting to be collected, then your leader has to walk out to a landmark and physically use a card, roughly 3 times a day, for 7 days. While 3 other classes are watching to see who does it. The 2 things the examination rewards are directly opposed to each other. You cannot farm points without exposing your leader, and you cannot protect your leader without giving up the points. There is no version of the rules where you get both, and every class has to decide, on day 1, which one it wants more. The school does not point this out, it simply hands them the manual. And this is the quiet genius of the whole design, so it is worth saying slowly. The examination never forces a single confrontation. It does not require any class to attack any other. It hands out a set of rules in which the safe move and the profitable move point in opposite directions, and then it steps back. Every class will expose its leader, or fail to earn, entirely by its own choice. Every class that gets read will have been read because it chose points over secrecy. The school does not have to engineer any drama at all. It has built a machine where the incentives do the cutting, and it can simply sit on the shore and record which teenagers cut themselves. A poorly designed examination tells you who studied. A well-designed one tells you how people think when nobody is telling them what to do. This is the second kind. There is no correct answer written down anywhere, no threshold to clear, no model solution. There is only a set of pressures, pointed against each other, and 7 days for 40 children to reveal their own natures under them. Class D's answer to it is genuinely clever, and it comes from a class nobody expects cleverness from. When Horikita goes to claim a site, the rest of the class crowds around her in a loose knot, bodies packed close, so that anybody watching from a distance sees a group of students standing together and cannot see whose hands are on the card. It is a small piece of tradecraft invented by teenagers on their first day, and it works. It is also, and this is the part that stays with you, the first time this class does anything as a class. 40 students who spent their entire first term blaming each other for a 0, who could not sit through one study session without somebody storming out, walk out to a landmark together, and stand in a deliberate huddle so that a girl most of them do not like can hide her hands. Nobody had to be paid, nobody had to be threatened. Somebody explained the rule and they simply did it. There is one more thing about the leader rule that everybody notices on day 1, and files away as unimportant. A class may change its leader during the examination, not freely and not on a whim. The rules say a leader cannot be changed without a legitimate reason, which reads on first hearing like the usual bureaucratic hedge that exists so the school does not have to arbitrate silly disputes. Nobody at all treats it as a strategic option. It sounds like an administrative footnote about what happens if something goes wrong. One student on that island reads it the other way round. He looks at a rule describing the conditions under which a leader may be swapped, and instead of asking what happens if a leader becomes unable to continue, he asks what would have to be true for a swap to be permitted, and whether he could arrange for that thing to become true. That question is the entire ending of this examination, and it gets asked on the first day, before anybody has even set up a tent. There are also penalties, and they are worth knowing because several of them land on this exam later. If a student cannot continue due to poor health or injury, they retire from the examination and the class loses 30 points. Polluting the environment costs 20. There is a roll call twice a day, at 8 in the morning and 8 in the evening, and missing one costs 5 points. And then there is the last rule, which is different in kind from the others. Violence, theft, or the destruction of another class's property does not cost points. It causes the immediate failure of the entire class the offending student belongs to, and that student forfeits all of their private points. Not a deduction, failure. One student throwing a punch ends the examination for 40 people. Keep that one in mind, because somebody is going to break it. It is worth pausing on why that rule exists in the form it does, because it is the school being unusually honest about what it has built. Everything else in this examination is a price. Comfort has a price, exposure has a price, a wrong guess has a price. The school is entirely comfortable with students hurting each other's chances, deceiving each other, planting spies, and selling each other out, and it has attached a number to all of it so that the trade can be made rationally. Violence is the one thing it will not price. It is not expensive, it is disqualifying. Which tells you the boundary the school actually cares about. You may do almost anything to another student here as long as you do it with information, money, or manipulation. The moment you do it with your hands, the entire structure comes down on your class. That is a real line and the school means it. It is also, if you think about it for more than a moment, an invitation, because a rule that severe is only ever enforced when somebody sees it happen. So those are the rules: 7 days, 300 points that are both your money and your score, one secret leader who has to keep showing themselves in order to earn anything, 50 points for reading somebody else, 50 for guessing wrong, and the loss of your entire week if you are read yourself. And then 4 classes look at the same manual and reach 4 completely different conclusions, which is the genuinely interesting part, because the manual does not favor any of them. Everything that happens over the next 7 days comes out of what each group of teenagers decided those words meant. Class A goes first, in the sense that it decides fastest and most confidently. Their approach is a fortress. They find a cave, they move into it, and they guard it. When Horikita and Ayanokoji come poking around to scout the position, Kohei Katsuragi personally turns them away and warns Horikita that what she is doing might start a war. The logic is sound and it is worth respecting. Class A comes into this examination sitting on more than 1,000 class points, an enormous lead over everybody. Katsuragi is therefore not playing to win. He is playing not to lose, which is a completely different game and usually the correct one when you are ahead. Minimize exposure, hold a defensible position, take no gambles, let the other 3 classes exhaust themselves. There is a phrase for the way Katsuragi thinks, which he uses himself in a later examination, about defending the castle gate. He is a fundamentally defensive strategist. Given a lead, he will protect it rather than extend it, and given a choice between a safe 100 points and a risky 300, he will take the 100 every time. It is not cowardice. It is the correct play for a man sitting on the biggest pile in the room, and if Class A were actually one class, it would probably have worked. He also does something quietly smart with the leader rule. Katsuragi is the obvious leader of Class A, the face of it, the one everybody would name, so he is not the exam leader. He designates Yahiko Totsuka, his own lieutenant, precisely so that anybody watching Katsuragi learns nothing at all. He even walks around holding a key card, which is a decoy, and a good one. And none of it matters because Class A is not one class. It is 2, and they are at war with each other. Katsuragi is described as one of the 2 leaders of Class A. The other is Arisu Sakayanagi, and Katsuragi ultimately answers to her, and the two of them are openly at odds. Ichinose remarks on it during the week, which tells you it is visible from outside the class. What Sakayanagi does with this examination is one of the coldest things anybody does in this story. She does not compete, she refuses to participate at all, and takes the standard retirement penalty for it, which costs Class A 30 points. She simply declines. In an examination her class is nominally trying to win and eats the cost. Then her faction goes to work, not against the other three classes, but against Katsuragi. Masumi Kemuro handles research, Masayoshi Hashimoto executes, and Hashimoto does two things over that week, both of them aimed inward. The first is that he secretly sells the identity of Class A's leader to Ryuen, their own leader. The carefully protected secret that Katsuragi built his entire decoy strategy around is handed to the most dangerous student in the year by a boy sitting inside the cave. The second is stranger and more revealing. A member of Sakayanagi's faction deliberately misuses an occupied spot, which carries a 50-point penalty, on purpose, in order to reduce his own class's score. 50 points spent by Class A to damage Class A. Because Sakayanagi's objective was never to win this examination, her objective was for Katsuragi to lose it. A defeat here would strip his faction of influence, and once his influence was gone, the class would consolidate under her. She says so almost casually afterward, that everything happened more or less as she expected, and that the Katsuragi faction will lose a great deal of standing. And when the results are read out, Katsuragi is savaged by his own classmates for a defeat that his own classmates engineered. So while three classes spend 7 days on an island trying to outthink each other, Class A is quietly losing to a girl who did not set foot in the examination, and who was playing for something none of the rules mentioned. Class B under Honami Ichinose does almost exactly what Class D does, only better. They camp near a waterfall, and they run a frugal, cooperative, live-off-the-land operation that the story explicitly describes as working much like Class D's camp, but at a better location. Same philosophy: spend little, endure the weak, bank the difference. They simply have a stronger position and a class that functions without friction. They use the same misdirection as Class A. Ichinose is famous, universally known, the last person you could hide anything behind, so Class B names the low-profile Chihiro Shiranami as its secret leader. It is worth noticing how similar Class B and Class D actually are, because it makes what happens to them later meaningful. Both classes decided the same thing: spend as little as possible, live off the island, bank the difference. Same philosophy, same frugal instinct, same bet that endurance beats comfort. The only real differences are that Class B has a better campsite, a class that functions without tearing itself apart, and no spy in its midst that it knows of. On paper, Class B is simply Class D done properly, by a class that does not have to fight itself to get anything done, which is exactly why the way their two islands diverge at the very end is the whole point of the examination. And then Class C, under Kakeru Ryuen, does something that on first hearing sounds like a boy who has given up, and is in fact the sharpest reading of the rules that anybody produces. He spends everything, all 300 points, immediately on comfort. Class C camps on a beach and treats the examination as a holiday, which is precisely what it looks like from the outside, and precisely what he wants it to look like. Because there is one more line in the rules: a class cannot be driven below 0. Which means that a class holding 300 points has 300 points to lose, and a class holding nothing has nothing to lose, and every penalty in the examination, the 30 for retirement, the 20 for pollution, the 5 for roll call, the 50 for wrong guess, becomes a threat that cannot touch it. Ryuen has not thrown away his score. He has converted it into total immunity and bought a week of sunshine with the change. Everybody looking at that beach sees a class that has stopped trying. What is actually happening is that the only student who read the rules all the way to the bottom has removed himself from the scoring system entirely so that he can play a different game on top of it. And then he goes further, and this is the move that separates him from everybody else on the island. He evacuates his own class. Withdrawing from the examination is permitted. It carries a penalty, but Class C is already at 0 and penalties cannot reach it, so the penalty is free. And so, one by one, almost every student in Class C simply leaves. By the 4th day, when Ayane Koji and Sakura walk into Class C's camp, there is essentially nobody there. At the end of the week, the only Class C students still on that island are Ryuen himself, Mio Ibuki, and Satoru Kaneda. 3 people on a beach out of 40. Now look at what he has actually constructed. He has no points to protect, no penalties that can touch him, no camp that can be rated for anything of value, and no classmates whose behavior he has to manage. Every single vulnerability the other 3 classes are spending the week guarding, he has simply disposed of. And the 2 students he kept are not there to survive, they are there to be inserted into other people's camps. Mio Ibuki goes into Class D, posing as an injured student thrown out by her own class, which is a story that fits perfectly with what everybody can see happening on that beach. Satoru Kaneda goes into Class B on the same errand. Ryuen has turned his entire class into a delivery mechanism for 2 spies, and he has made the delivery credible by publicly appearing to fall apart. He also makes one more choice that nobody else makes. Every other class hides its leader behind a decoy, on the sound reasoning that the obvious candidate is the one people will name. Ryuen takes the role himself. The loudest, most conspicuous, most closely watched student in the year makes himself the secret, and bets that no one will believe he would be so careless. And Class D, in last place, with the least to spend and the most to prove, decides to spend nothing at all. They find a river with clean water. Sudo and Ike and Yamauji, of all people, are the ones who locate it, and Ike builds the fire, because it turns out that the boy who cannot pass an examination has been camping before and knows how. Their entire strategy is that they will live rough, buy nothing, endure it, and finish the week holding very close to the 300 they started with. It is not sophisticated, it is a bet that discomfort is survivable and that everybody else will blink first. So lay the 4 of them side by side, because the examination is really a single question asked 4 ways. Class A, sitting on an enormous lead, plays not to lose. Hold the cave, take no risks, let the lead do the work. The safe game of a class that is already winning. Class B, competent and well-liked, plays a clean, frugal, honest game and trusts that doing everything correctly will be enough. The decent game of a class with nothing to hide. Class C spends everything, buys immunity, and turns the whole examination into a platform for espionage. The radical game of a class whose leader has read the rules more carefully than anyone. And Class D, with the least of anything, bets on endurance. Buy nothing, suffer the week, and finish holding what you never spent. The desperate game of a class with no better option. None of those is obviously wrong. That is the quality of the design. 4 reasonable strategies, 4 groups of teenagers each convinced they have read the situation correctly, and the examination simply waits to see which reading survives contact with 7 days on an island. And the class that wins is going to win with a 5th strategy that none of them, including its own members, know is being played. Because Class D's plan has one hidden dependency, and it very nearly works exactly as planned, right up until the moment their leader starts running a fever and does not tell anybody. What the school actually hands them, before any of the buying begins, is almost nothing. Hirata reads the inventory out to the class: 2 tents, each of which sleeps 8, 2 flashlights, 1 box of matches, a backpack and basic amenities for every student, and sunscreen for anyone who wants it. That is the entire provision for 40 people for 7 days in August. 2 tents for 40. The arithmetic on that alone tells you what the week is going to be, and nobody in the class needs it explained. Everything else, every additional shelter, every meal, every liter of clean water, exists in a catalog with a price beside it. Hirata lays out the logic plainly, that anything left over at the end gets added to the class's total. Yamauji immediately starts asking about barbecues and swimming, and Hirata refuses him. And Ike, who cannot pass an examination and has never been accused of strategic thinking, produces the sentence that actually moves the room, which is that if they can tough it out for a week, they get 30,000 a month. That is the whole class's motivation, stated honestly by the least sophisticated person present. They are not doing this for the letter. They are doing it because they have all been living on a fraction of what the other classes get since the day their points hit 0, and this is the first route back that anybody has offered them. And it is worth appreciating who actually makes the plan work, because it is not the honor students. The camp exists because Sudo, Ike, and Yamauji find the river. Ike, specifically the boy who cannot pass a written examination, is the one who knows how to build a fire from nothing, because he has been camping before and the clever students have not. Out here, none of the abilities the school grades are worth very much. Nobody is asked to sit a test. They are asked to find water, keep a fire lit, and endure, and on that examination the 3 idiots comfortably outperform half the students who look down on them. It is the first quiet appearance of a pattern that will define this class for years. The students the school marked as defective are not defective everywhere. They are defective at the narrow set of things the school chooses to measure, and a week on an island measures none of them. Then they have to choose a leader. The class moves first toward Hirata, which is the obvious answer. Maya Sato proposes him, and most of the room agrees immediately, because he is trusted and competent, and the person everybody instinctively looks to. And Kushida interrupts with a counter-proposal. Her reasoning is careful, and it is genuinely good. She points out that people like Hirata and Karuizawa stand out whether they mean to or not, and that the leader needs to be somebody who flies under the radar while still being responsible enough to carry it. And she says there is only one person in the class who satisfies both conditions. Horikita. Hirata agrees at once and asks Horikita to take it. Horikita accepts. On the face of it, that is sound, tactical thinking from the most socially capable person in the room, and everyone in that circle hears it as exactly that. It is worth holding the moment up to the light, though, without overstating it. What Kushida has just done is take the single most targetable role in the examination, the one job where being noticed loses the whole week, and hand it to the classmate she privately hates. She gives no sign of malice. The argument she makes is correct on its merits, and the anime never has her admit to anything here. So it is not sabotage. It is a nomination that happens to place a target on a person she despises, made in front of 40 people who have no idea she despises her, and it is impossible to tell from the outside which of those things is doing the work. Horikita takes the card, and within hours the class starts losing pieces of itself. Koenji volunteers for the search party, which is already surprising, and spends the expedition demonstrating his acrobatics through the treetops and announcing that he is the pinnacle of beauty. Then he simply stops. Yukimura comes back with the report that Koenji was not feeling well and has returned to the boat. Sudo screams his name into the trees. Koenji is next seen climbing the ship's anchor chain, admiring the moon. That costs Class D 30 points. Their ceiling drops from 300 to 270 on the first day, and it is not taken by another class, or by a clever play, or by any kind of misfortune. One student was bored, and the class paid 30 points for it, and there was never any mechanism by which anybody could have stopped him. And the leader they have just elected is ill. Horikita has been sick since before they landed. She spent the cruise resting in her cabin rather than joining any of it, and she carries the fever through the entire examination without telling a single person. Ayanokoji only works it out on the 5th night, sitting at the campfire, and by then she has been running on nothing for the better part of a week. She will not withdraw. Withdrawing would mean admitting a limit in front of a class she has spent months describing as worthless, and that is not a thing she is currently able to do. And there is a cruel efficiency to how the school arranged this, whether it meant to or not. The leader role is the one job in the examination that punishes weakness most directly, because the leader has to keep exposing herself to earn anything, and Class D handed it to the one student least able to admit she was weak. A different leader, a Hirata or a Kushida, would have simply said they felt unwell and stepped back, and the whole disaster would never have happened. Horikita's particular defect, the inability to lean on anyone, is precisely the defect that turns a fever into a catastrophe. The examination did not just test her. It found the exact shape of what was wrong with her and pressed on it. That fever is the load-bearing detail of this entire examination. Everything that follows runs through it. And it is worth being concrete about what being the leader actually requires of her while she is carrying it, because the job is not ceremonial. The occupation right on a spot expires every 8 hours. To keep earning, somebody has to walk out to the landmark and redeclare it, and that somebody can only be the leader. 3 times a day, every day, for 7 days, a girl with a fever has to get up, walk out to a site, and stand there holding a card while 40 people arrange themselves around her so that nobody watching from the tree line can see whose hands are on it. She does this at 8 in the morning. She does it in the afternoon heat. She does it again after dark. She sleeps in a tent shared with a dozen other girls, on the ground in August, eating whatever the class managed to catch or forage that day, because buying food would come out of the score. And she does not tell anybody she is ill, because telling them would mean asking for something. There is a version of this week where she says, on the second morning, that she is not well and someone else should hold the card for a few days. The rules would have permitted it easily. The class would almost certainly have agreed. Hirata would have taken it without a word of complaint. She does not consider it for a moment, and the reason she does not is the same reason she is in Class D in the first place. Asking would require her to believe that the people around her would help rather than use it against her, and she does not believe that yet, and she will not believe it for months. So she carries a fever through a survival exam rather than admit to 39 people that she has won. Then Class D takes in a stranger. Ayanokoji, Yamauji, and Sakura find a girl in the forest, injured. Her name is Mio Ibuki, and she is from Class C, and she is genuinely hurt. They bring her back to camp to be treated over her own objections. Kushida brings her fruit. Ibuki is visibly thrown by it because she has not budgeted for an enemy class taking care of her. Her injuries are real. Ryuen inflicted them. And that is precisely why the cover works, because a girl beaten and abandoned by the class currently having a party on a beach is an entirely believable object of sympathy, and every part of the story she is telling can be verified by anybody who walks over and looks. This is worth dwelling on because it is the single nastiest idea in the whole examination, and it is easy to skate past. Ryuen did not fake Ibuki's injuries. He inflicted real ones on a member of his own class so that her cover would survive inspection. He hurt his own soldier to make the lie true. A wound that can be checked is not a lie at all, and he understood that a genuinely damaged girl would be believed in a way that an actress never could. He does the same thing with the way he treats both spies in front of the others. He is deliberately, visibly cruel to Ibuki and Kaneda before he sends them out, and he says why. He needs them to genuinely hate him, because a person who genuinely resents their leader is convincing in a way that a loyal plant is not. He manufactures real emotion because real emotion cannot be caught. It is the same principle as the injuries, applied to feeling instead of flesh. That is the level Ryuen is operating at, and it is important to establish it here, because it makes what happens to him at the end land properly. He is not beaten by someone who outschemed him at his own game. He plays his own game nearly flawlessly. Class D absorbs a Class C student on humanitarian grounds, and the class that does it is the class with a spy problem it will not discover for days. To be fair to them, they are not entirely asleep. On the third night, somebody breaks into the girl's tent and goes through Ibuki's bag, looking for her phone. Class D's own quiet counterintelligence, already suspicious of the stranger, already checking. They find nothing conclusive, and the search itself becomes another small crack in a camp that is running out of goodwill. And there is a conversation in the middle of all this that only makes sense later. Ayanokoji tells Ibuki, directly and unprompted, that he does not suspect her of the theft in the camp and that he trusts her. She is thrown by it. She blushes and thanks him, which is not a thing Mio Ibuki does. At the time it reads as the one genuinely decent boy in a paranoid camp, extending some warmth to a girl. Everybody else has started watching. Hold on to it. It will look completely different in a few days. What is worth appreciating about Ryuen's plan here is how little of it depends on Ibuki being clever. She does not have to manipulate anybody. She does not have to construct a story or maintain a lie under pressure. She simply has to be visibly, genuinely injured by her own class, and then be present and let a group of decent teenagers do what decent teenagers do. Class D's kindness is the attack surface. Ryuen worked out that the class in last place, the one everybody looks down on, would be the one most likely to take in a stray because they know exactly what being written off feels like. What follows is a slow, grinding collapse of trust that has nothing to do with strategy at all. On the fifth day, Karuizawa discovers her underwear has been stolen. The class conducts a bag search. Yamauji finds it in Ike's bag. Ayanokoji quietly takes the underwear, and when Hirata pats him down and asks, Hirata reports that he is clean. Ayanokoji absorbs the suspicion deliberately, on the reasoning that his reputation has the least distance to fall, and that Hirata, whose girlfriend is the victim, has every motivation to let the matter die quietly. It does not die quietly. Trust in that camp is finished. The girls demand the boys' and girls' camps be separated, and a guard assigned. Hirata is the natural choice to watch the boys, and Horikita points out that Hirata is also a boy and therefore also needs watching, and nominates Ayanokoji as the second guard, on the grounds that he does not appear to have the same tendencies as the others. The class agrees, mostly because he is not prominent enough to be worth arguing about. Then, on the day the whole class is out gathering food ahead of a rainstorm, somebody sets a fire in the camp, and the survival manual burns. They lose their written reference, the document with all the rules and prices in it, in a week where every decision depends on knowing exactly what things cost. Nobody is ever identified. The class turns on itself further, everybody quietly suspecting somebody. And in the confusion, Ibuki slips away from camp. It is worth stopping to look at what this camp has become by the sixth day, because the picture is genuinely bleak and it matters for what comes next. The boys and girls are physically separated and guarding each other. Somebody has been stealing. Somebody has burned their manual. The one girl they took in out of kindness has vanished. Their leader is visibly unwell and pretending not to be, and nobody trusts anybody. This is a class that, a few months earlier, spent its entire first month's money in a week, and then blamed each other for the consequences. Put it under real pressure, with no adults and no comfort, and it does what it did then. It fractures. The defect the school identified in these students, whatever it was in each individual case, is on full display, and from the outside, Class D looks exactly like what its letter says it is. That is the state of the camp at the moment everything turns, not a plucky underdog rallying together. A frightened, suspicious, exhausted group of teenagers coming apart at the seams, which is what makes the ending so strange, because none of them are about to rally, and they are about to win anyway. The day it all comes apart begins with something small and stupid. They are fishing at the river. Ayanokoji asks Horikita to show him her leader key card, because he wants to compare it against a card he saw Katsuragi holding days earlier, and he is trying to work out whether what he saw was real or a decoy. She shows him. He looks at it and is still not certain. Kushida remarks lightly to Ibuki and Yamauji that Ayanokoji and Horikita seem close. And Yamauji puts mud in Horikita's hair. It reads in the moment as exactly what it looks like, a jealous boy doing something childish to provoke a reaction. Horikita is entirely unimpressed and throws him to the ground, which she is more than capable of doing, and Kushida tells her to go and clean herself up. So she walks to the waterfall to wash the mud out of her hair. And while she is doing that, the leader key card leaves her possession. She tells one person, not the class, not Hirata, not Kushida, Ayanokoji, and nobody else. That detail matters more than it seems to. The leader has just lost the single object the entire examination is built around, the thing that identifies her and enables every point the class can earn, and her instinct is to conceal it from 38 of her 39 classmates and handle it alone. It is the fever all over again in a different form. A problem arrives, and her response is to hide it and carry it by herself, because the alternative is trusting the class, and she does not. She tells Ayanokoji only because he already knows too much to be kept out, having been standing right there. Even her one exception is not really a choice. Then she goes to find it herself, because that is who she is. She suspects the outsider, which is correct, and she tracks Ibuki down, and she confirms the card is on her. And Ibuki attacks her. It is worth being clear about what that decision actually is, because it is easy to watch it as a fight scene and miss the size of the bet. Violence against another class does not cost points. It causes the immediate failure of the offender's entire class. If a single person sees what Ibuki is about to do, Class C is finished, all 40 of them, and every private point Ibuki owns is gone. She does it anyway, purely on the calculation that there is nobody in the forest to see it. Horikita fights back, and she fights well enough that Ibuki tells her so afterward, which from Ibuki is close to warmth. But Horikita has been running a fever for 6 days and has barely eaten, and the outcome is not really in doubt. She loses. And what goes through her head while she is losing is the part that matters. She thinks about the fact that she has spent months looking down on Class D, that she has called her classmates worthless and meant it, and that here she is, resolving a problem with violence in a forest, which is precisely the behavior she has always despised in them, and that the difference she believed existed between herself and the people she was contemptuous of does not appear to exist at all. Ibuki takes the card and goes. And the examination gives us one more detail, right at the edge of the frame, that quietly reframes everything that has happened. When Ibuki delivers the stolen card, she does not simply take it back to Ryuen on the beach. She reports in over a ham radio, and the person on the other end of that radio is Katsuragi. Class A and Class C are working together. The fortress in the cave and the party on the beach, the two classes that appear to have nothing to do with each other and opposite strategies, have a private line open between them, and Class D's leader card is being handed up that line. Whatever is actually going on across this island is larger than 4 classes each playing their own game, and Class D has just become a piece in somebody else's. Ayanokoji finds Horikita collapsed and carries her to a cave, and when she comes round he tells her what has happened. She is much worse now. He asks her to withdraw from the examination. She refuses, and her reason is the most revealing thing she says all week. She insists the loss of the card was her own fault, and that it happened because she had no friends, nobody watching her back, nobody standing near the waterfall. The girl who arrived at this school announcing that friends would only slow her down, lying in a cave having lost her class the examination, identifies the cause precisely and correctly, and it is the exact thing she built her whole personality on refusing. Then she faints. Ayano Koji carries her to the teacher's camp, and she is withdrawn from the examination. It costs Class D 30 points, the same penalty Koenji cost them on the first day, taken this time by the one student who wanted it least. There is something worth pausing on in that cave, before the examination resolves, because it is the most important thing that happens to her all week, and it has nothing to do with points. She has spent the entire year, and most of this examination, operating on a single belief, that she is better than the people around her, that she does not need them, and that needing people is a weakness she has risen above. Every cold thing she has done proceeds from it. And lying in that cave, having lost the card, she does not blame Ibuki, or the fever, or bad luck. She says the loss happened because she had no friends, because there was nobody at the waterfall with her, because she had spent so long insisting she needed no one that, at the one moment she did, there was no one there. That is the belief breaking in her own voice, in real time, correctly diagnosed by the person it has cost the most. She does not fully absorb it yet. She still refuses to withdraw, still cannot quite let go of the pride even flat on the ground. But the crack is there, and it is her own hand that made it, and the rest of her arc across the series is the slow widening of exactly that crack. The examination did to her belief what no examination could do to her grades. It disproved it, on the island, in front of the only witness who mattered, which was herself. So this is where Class D stands with the week nearly over. Their leader is gone. Their key card is in the hands of Class C, which means Ryuin knows exactly who their leader was. The manual has burned. The camp has spent days accusing itself. They have paid 60 points in retirement penalties, and they are about to be correctly identified, which under the rules costs another 50 and wipes out every bonus point they have accumulated across 7 days. By any reasonable reading of the scoreboard, Class D has just lost this examination in the most complete way available. They are about to record the largest gain of any class on that island. The reason none of that was the disaster it looked like is that Suzune Horikita was never going to be Class D's leader when the guesses were counted. She was its leader for most of the week. She held the card, she carried the fever, she lost the fight. But on the final day, the name attached to Class D's leadership was not hers, it was Ayano Koji's. And every enemy class that spent the week working out that Class D's leader was Horikita had spent that effort confirming a fact that was about to stop being true. Here is the rule he used, and it is the same rule everybody else read on the first day and filed as an administrative footnote. A leader cannot be changed without a legitimate reason. Everyone heard that as a restriction. You are not allowed to swap your leader around freely to dodge a guess. Ayano Koji heard the other half of it. If a legitimate reason exists, then the swap is permitted. The rule is not only a lock, it is also a written guarantee that the right key will open it. And a leader's failing health is a legitimate reason. So when he carried a feverish Horikita to the teacher's camp and had her withdraw from the examination, that was not the sad end of Class D's chances. Her withdrawal created a legitimate reason to change leaders, and he took the role himself, and the moment he did, every guess of Horikita became a wrong guess. He explains it to her plainly afterward. You are not our leader, Horikita. I changed D's leader, and as a result, Ryuin and Katsuragi both named you, and they were both wrong. Then he tells her the rest, and the rest is the part that turns the whole week inside out. Because she asks him the obvious question. She wants to know how the card was stolen, how Ibuki got the opening, how any of it happened, and he answers by telling her that he arranged all of it. Go back through the week with that in mind, and every accident becomes a step. Ibuki was a spy. Ayano Koji knew that, and a spy with a camera can simply photograph the leader's card and leave quietly with proof and no incident. So he destroyed Ibuki's camera, not to protect Horikita, but to force Ibuki into stealing the physical card instead of photographing it, because a physical theft is something he could see coming, and time and control. Then he waited. Specifically, he waited for Horikita's health to get worse, because a genuinely ill leader is the legitimate reason he needed, and it had to be real. The mud in Horikita's hair was not Yamauji being jealous. Ayano Koji paid him for it. He offered Yamauji the one thing Yamauji wanted, Sakura's contact details in exchange for provoking Hori Kita at the river so that she would be sent to the waterfall to clean up, away from the camp, alone. He says it flatly. I intentionally got you to show your card to Ibuki, got you dirty, got you to visit the waterfall, and lured Ibuki into stealing your card. Every beat of the sequence that looked like a run of bad luck was a thing he did on purpose. He got her to display the card where the spy could see it. He got her covered in mud. He got her sent to the waterfall, and he opened a window for Ibuki to take it. Even the fire that burned the manual, the chaos that let Ibuki slip out of camp, he folds into the plan. He says he used the arson to throw the camp into a panic and give Ibuki her opening. He is careful in his own account to say he used it rather than that he said it, and the anime never names who lit it, so that particular thread is left dangling. But he took a fire that terrified his own class and turned it into cover for a theft he wanted to happen. Take a moment to appreciate the scale of what that confession describes, because it is easy to hear it as a list and miss the thing it adds up to. He did not have a plan that survived contact with events. He had a plan that consumed events. The spy who infiltrated his camp he used. The bored classmate who abandoned the exam he worked around. His own ill leader he waited on deliberately until her illness was severe enough to be useful. The theft that looked like a catastrophe he arranged. The fire that looked like sabotage he turned to cover. Every single thing that happened to Class D that week, every accident and betrayal and stroke of bad luck, he either caused or absorbed into a structure that pointed at a first-place finish. And he did all of it while appearing, to everyone including his own class, to be a completely unremarkable boy who occasionally happened to be nearby when something went wrong. Nobody watched him do any of it, because the entire design of his character is that nobody watches him at all. That is not a side effect of the plan. It is the plan. The reason he could arrange the theft of his own leader's card in plain sight is that no one has ever once considered him worth looking at. And the conversation from days earlier, the one that seemed like the decent boy reassuring the suspected girl, when he told Ibuki he did not suspect her and that he trusted her, and she blushed and thanked him. That was him lowering the guard of the spy he was about to root his entire plan through. Now sit with the shape of what he actually did, because it is genuinely elegant, and it is easy to miss under the machinery. He did not hide Class D's leader. That is what every other class spent the week doing, hiding a leader behind a decoy and praying nobody read them. He did the opposite. He advertised a leader. He made sure the enemy classes could find her, confirm her, and verify her, and then, at the last possible moment, he made her not the leader. Ryuin's intelligence operation worked perfectly. Katsuragi's worked perfectly. They correctly identified Hori Kita, they obtained the physical card, they held it in their hands and confirmed it was genuine. Katsuragi actually says it, looking at the real stolen card. It is genuine, good job. They did everything right and they lost, because they were beaten by a footnote about health, read backwards by the one person who read it backwards. It is worth staying with how much work that footnote quietly did, because it reframes the entire 7 days. Every other class treated the leader as an object to be hidden. The whole design of the examination pushes you toward that. Conceal your leader, protect the secret, and pray. And because everyone accepted that framing, the contest became an intelligence war. Who can find whose leader? Who can plant a spy, buy a name, photograph a card? Ryuin was the best in the year at that war, and he won it comprehensively. By the final day, he knew every leader on the island. Ayanokoji did not play that game at all. He looked at the same rules and noticed that the leader was not actually a fixed fact you had to protect. It was a designation that could be moved under a condition, and the condition was one he could manufacture. So instead of hiding a secret, he made the secret irrelevant. It did not matter who found Hori Kita. It did not matter how thoroughly they confirmed her. The answer they were confirming had an expiry date, and he controlled it. That is a different kind of thinking from everybody else on the island, and it is worth naming precisely. The others were playing the game well. He was reading the rules of the game for a move the designers had left open, and nobody had bothered to look for. Ryuin outschemed 3 classes and lost to a person who was not scheming at all, only reading more carefully. And along the way, he worked out both of their leaders too, from almost nothing. For Class A, he had seen Katsuragi leaving a spot holding a card early in the week. The obvious conclusion is that Katsuragi is the leader. Ayanokoji rejects it immediately, because Katsuragi is too careful to expose himself claiming a spot where anyone could see him. So why was he doing it? Ayanokoji concludes it was a performance, Katsuragi covering the fact that somebody else had occupied that spot without his permission, and that the somebody else, the person standing with him, was the real leader. That was Yahiko Totsuka. There is a beautiful irony buried in that deduction, which is that the person who occupied the spot without Katsuragi's permission was Hashimoto. committing Sakai Yanagi's deliberate act of sabotage against her own class. Sakai Yanagi's private war on Katsuragi is the thing that leaked Class A's real leader to Ayano. Her attack on her own side handed him the answer. For Class C, he had noticed, when they crossed paths with Ryuen, that there was a radio beside him, and that Ibuki carried a matching one. Everyone believed Class C had evacuated the island entirely, but if Ryuen was on the radio with Ibuki, then Ryuen was still there, and a man who stays behind alone on an island he has publicly abandoned is a man holding something worth staying for. He concluded Ryuen was Class C's leader, hiding in plain sight, exactly as Ryuen had bet nobody would guess. In Class B, he deliberately left alone. Class D and Class B were on friendly terms, close to allied, and naming Ichinose leader would have damaged that for no good reason. Better still, he had worked out that Ryuen had a spy inside Class B as well, which meant Class B's leader was going to be correctly guessed by somebody else regardless. So he let Ryuen do that damage for him and kept the alliance intact. He got the result without paying for it. So on the final day, Class D submits its guesses. Ayano hands the list to Hirata, and Hirata writes down the names. Yahiko Totsuka for Class A, Kakeru Ryuen for Class C, and a deliberate blank where Class B's leader would go. 2 correct guesses, no wrong ones, 100 points, clean. Ryuen guesses 2, and he is so close. He names Totsuka for Class A, correct. He names Shiranami for Class B, correct, from his spy Kaneda, and he names Horikita for Class D. Wrong by a day. Let me give you the arithmetic, because Ryuen himself had it all worked out in advance, and watching it fail is the most satisfying part of the whole examination. Ryuen had a ledger, he had it on screen, and he walked through it. He had spent his class to 0, so he was penalty-proof. He had bought Class A's leader through Hashimoto. He expected 3 correct guesses worth 150 points plus his spot occupation bonuses. He expected Class A to be dragged down to 170 and Class C to clear 150 from guesses alone, and with his bonuses on top to exceed Class A, he says it out loud. I win. 2 things broke it, and both of them were Ayano. The first is the wrong guess on Horikita. Ryuen budgeted 150 points for 3 correct guesses. He got 50 for Totsuka, 50 for Shiranami, and then minus 50 for Horikita because she was not the leader anymore. That is a 100-point swing against his own projection, in a single wrong name. The second is worse. Ayano named Ryuen as Class C's leader, which meant Class C had its own leader correctly guessed, and the rule for that is not merely minus 50. It is minus 50 and the negation of every bonus point the class earned all week. Ryuen's spot occupation points, his guess winnings, all of it wiped, and because he had already spent his class to 0, there was no cushion underneath to absorb it. Class C finished the examination on nothing. 0, the only class to gain absolutely nothing, despite landing 2 of its 3 guesses, because the one guess it missed was the one that mattered, and the one name it never thought to protect was its own. Ryuen works it out himself afterward, and to his credit he does not flinch from it. I have figured it out, he says. The reason for their high score and the reason ours was 0, it is because we did not guess Class D's leader. He had the right leader in his hands, verified, and he could not use it, because the rule that would have made it worth 100 points had quietly changed the answer while he was holding it. There is one more casualty in this arithmetic, and it is the class that did everything by the book. Class B under Ichinose played the cleanest game on the island. They lived frugally, cooperated without friction, ran a camp that worked, and accumulated a solid total honestly. And on the final day, facing the guessing round, they made the mathematically correct decision. A wrong guess costs 50 points. Ichinose had over 200 points banked and no need to gamble, so Class B guessed nobody at all. Kanzaki lays out the reasoning plainly. The penalty for a wrong guess is 50 points, and there is no need to take that risk. It is the right call on paper. It is risk-free. And it is also the reason Class B could only ever come second, because a class that guesses nobody has removed its own ceiling. The most it can score is what it saved, with no upside from reading anyone else. In Class B's own leader, the low-profile Shiranami was correctly guessed anyway by Ryuen's spy inside their camp. So Class B took the 50-point penalty and lost its bonus points, and had nothing on the other side of the ledger to make up for it, because it had declined to guess. There is a quiet lesson in the gap between Class B and Class D. Both played frugal, honest, live-off-the-island games. Both were correctly identified by Ryuen. The difference is that Class D took a calculated risk on the guesses, and Class D's leader was not who anyone thought. Ichinose played it safe and correct and finished second. Ayano played it exposed and clever and finished first. The examination rewarded the gamble, and it was only a gamble because he had already rigged the one variable that made it safe. And then the results are read out. It is worth slowing down for the numbers themselves, because they are the whole story compressed into 4 figures, and each one is an argument. Class D first place, 225 points. Class B second, 140. Class A third, 120, against Katsuragi's confident expectation of over 500. Class C last, 0. Each of those numbers is a verdict on a way of thinking. Class A's 120, against Katsuragi's confident expectation of over 500, is what happens when you play a flawless defensive game and the attack comes from inside your own walls. Class B's 140 is what a genuinely good, honest, careful week is worth when you refuse the one gamble that could have won it. Class C's 0 is the strangest of all, because Ryuen played the best individual game on that island, guessed 2 of 3 leaders correctly, and finished with nothing, because the single square he left uncovered was his own name. And Class D's 225 is what it looks like when someone reads the rules for a move nobody else thought to look for. Converted into class points, the effect on Class D is the largest single thing that has happened to them all year. They go from 87 class points to 312. They more than triple their standing in a week. They were a rounding error, a class sitting on almost nothing, and they walk off that island with a real total for the first time. They do not catch Class A. Class A is still more than 800 points ahead, and Katsuragi's class, despite losing this examination to its own internal sabotage, still gains 120 and sits comfortably at the top. Nobody has been overthrown. The rankings are intact. But the bottom class, the one built out of the school's rejects, running a fever and a spy and a burned manual and a leader who lost the card, produced the best single result on that island. And it did it by spending nothing, enduring everything, and being quietly steered by a boy nobody was watching. Which is exactly the part he does not let them see. Because when the class comes looking for the person who won it for them, the story they have been told does not lead to Ayanokoji. It leads to Horikita. Karuizawa comes running, delighted, wanting to know how she did it. Hirata told everyone that Horikita was the one who figured out the leaders of Class A, and Class C Matsushita thanks her for all the points. Sato calls her a genius. Karuizawa tells her admiringly that Ibuki was behind the fire and tried to run, and that Horikita chased her down, and that this is why she was ill all week. And Horikita stands there, genuinely bewildered, saying she has no idea what any of them are talking about. Because none of it was her. Ayanokoji did the reasoning, engineered the theft, changed the leader, submitted the guesses through Hirata, and then attached Horikita's name to the entire thing, deliberately, so that a class which had every reason to resent the cold girl who insulted them would instead see the leader who tripled their points. She confronts him about it. She has worked out that he fed Hirata the leaders and told him she was the one who solved it, and that he then asked Hirata to work on bringing the class together. And she asks him directly whether he is using her as a cover. His answer is to remind her of something he said to her earlier when she was collapsed in that cave. You need allies, and he tells her she has finally started to change. There is something worth noticing in how he does it, because it is characteristic of everything he does. He does not give her the win directly. He could have simply told the class that Horikita solved the leaders and left it there. Instead, he routes it through Hirata so that the story reaches the class from its most trusted member rather than from the forgettable boy at the back. And he separately asks Hirata to work on drawing the class together so that the goodwill has somewhere to land. He is not just handing Horikita a reputation. He is building the mechanism by which that reputation becomes durable, using the one classmate whose word the room accepts without question. That is either the most thoughtful thing anyone does for her all year, or the most thorough piece of social engineering in the whole examination, depending on which of his 2 faces you believe. And the point is that you cannot tell, and neither can she. And she grudgingly, in the most defended way a person can possibly say a warm thing, acknowledges him as an ally. She tells him not to act familiar with her back at school, that they are only working together to reach Class A, and then she says thank you, and immediately insists that she is not saying she needs him. It is, for her, an enormous thing to say. It is the first time she has called another human being an ally since she arrived at this school. And then the examination ends on a single line of his that recolors everything you have just watched. Because Ayanokoji alone thinks to himself that he has never once considered her an ally, not her, not Kushida, not Hirata, that all people are nothing but tools, that it does not matter how it is done or what has to be sacrificed, that winning is the only thing, and that as long as he wins in the end, nothing else matters at all. So there are two ways to read the whole week, and the story refuses to choose between them. In one reading, a boy did a genuinely generous thing. Horikita wanted to reach Class A and could not do it alone, and he manufactured, out of a survival exam, the one thing she was incapable of making for herself: allies, a class that believed in her, a reputation she had not earned yet but could grow into. He gave her the win and asked for nothing. In the other reading, none of that was for her. She was a useful instrument, positioned exactly where he needed her, credited because a credited leader is a more effective tool than a resentful one, and told she had changed because a person who believes they are changing is easier to steer than a person who does not. Both are supported by every frame. That is the show. The first special examination on that island is the moment it stops being a story about a school and becomes a story about a boy you cannot read, running experiments on the people around him, and being, at the very same time and by the very same actions, the best thing that has ever happened to the girl in the seat beside him. It is worth stepping back at the end of all this to see what the examination was really testing, because it was never about the island. Each class walked in with a strategy, and each strategy was really a statement about what that class believed mattered. Class A believed in protecting an advantage, and lost because it never noticed the threat was inside its own walls. Class B believed in doing everything correctly, and finished second, which is exactly where doing everything correctly gets you when someone else is willing to gamble. Class C believed in control, in information, in bending every person and rule to a plan, and produced a plan so complete that its own author could not see the one square he had left uncovered. And Class D believed in nothing in particular, because Class D barely held together, and it won because the one person quietly steering it believed only in reading the rules until they gave something up. There is a lesson buried in the four outcomes, and the school almost certainly intends it. Being ahead is not safety. Being correct is not enough. Being brilliant is not the same as being careful. And the class that looked least like a winner contained the person who understood the examination best, which is the school's entire thesis about Class D, delivered in a single week on a beach. It also quietly sets the shape of everything that follows. Ryuin will spend the next stretch of the story obsessed with finding the hidden hand that beat him, because he knows, correctly, that Horikita did not do this. Katsuragi's grip on Class A is broken, and Sakayanagi's rise begins here. And Horikita has been handed, without her knowledge, both a reputation she did not earn and the first genuine allies of her life. Every one of those threads is pulled taut on this island. In an examination, most of the participants will remember as the week they went camping. Class D goes home with 312 points, a first-place finish, and a leader who now, for the first time, has people who will stand next to her at the waterfall. And not one of them knows who actually put them there. Sleep well.